Good evening. This is Arul Dev. Welcome once again to this Tuesday Live. We've been picking different topics that are relevant to us. And in People First, we thought about this idea that let us share. And after doing a couple of weeks of sessions, we were thinking, what next? And one of us came up with the idea that why not link it, with the coaching work that we do. So People First also anchors. You could call it a school. We've been doing this now for more than 3 years, and it's building up. Called Coaching with Depth. We are training people, regular coaches or leaders and managers, how to coach and guide, and we do it in very simple, deep, natural, direct ways. So somebody suggested, why don't put two and two together? So as the topics come, let's also see how you can share from your own experience of coaching as to how you would coach around it. So that's what's born today's session. Today is the topic is very interesting because it's also very interesting because we do have a product called inner strengths. We give a lot of emphasis and focus on inner strengths. So why are we even talking about limitations? It's extraordinarily important, and that's why that's what we're going to begin. So I will. So today's agenda is in this 30 minutes will be two prong, or rather three prong. My sharing will have two contents. One is how do we work on limitations, and the theme that we said, saying that it's actually limitations that lead you your way, and not necessarily your vision and purpose alone. They are not the only things that lead you your way, but it's the limitations also. And I'm going to share lots of stories, lots of nuggets, and we will explore deeper. Two is my own experiences with coaching and guiding others, both the things that worked well and also the things that I struggled with. I like to share and see uh, how it. We just explore together in an open way, because going and guiding and coaching around limitations is rather a tricky one. So we will also talk about that. The third is I know some of you are on the live right now. Some of you will be listening in later. Those who are on the live right now, it would be great and participative if you put some comments or ask some questions. You're also welcome to come into this StreamYard room in a couple of minutes from now onwards, anytime you wish, so that we can have a chat, dialogue, take it further and deeper. So I like to begin with a couple of stories and sharings. So right through my history of 26, 27 years of doing inner work, I think from the time I passed out of college or in my fourth year, I was lucky enough to always have a clarity of vision, a clarity of purpose. I would say these beyond goals. Goals are things that you want to do, let's say on a year or 5 years or whatsoever. But even above that, how is it? Sometimes we do a lot of goals and then it adds up together or not later. But I was always lucky enough to know things ahead, or rather even get a partial glimpse of it ahead. So always had my vision and purpose intact right from my fourth year of college. So that was always there. But all through the 27 years, I've also been enormously focused on limitations, my own limitations. And never a day has it gone by where I've not worked on limitations. And I figured out ways of doing it in more healthy, positive, vibrant ways rather than getting depressed or worried that things are not changing and stuff like that. So first, we will take a little bit of stories around that. So for example, when I started and I jumped into post my college, I jumped into my career, I started my own business and all this stuff. I noticed that I had a hell of a lot of strengths that I came with quite naturally. Even though I was not from the business community, I could do things with a certain natural knack. But I also realized that there are certain limitations that I was bringing in. A classic limitation that I saw right from the beginning was I used to get overly attached or dependent on people, both on a personal front and also on a work front, to a point that sometimes I would wonder what life would be without them. And while it was extraordinarily positive, I also saw that it didn't allow me to be free, didn't allow me to be fully contributive. So I noticed the positive angle of it. I noticed the limitations, and I started working on it. Like that, I can share several stories. Uh, I've always maintained limitations as constant because, truly speaking, getting a little bit deeper, I've always been seeing that the life circumstances are arranged from the limitations also. Our own limitations make us tumble, fall down, get up, and they create certain reactions in others. That will be the whole story of our life, to a point that we can even debate who is actually leading our lives. Is it our limitations, or is it our purpose and aspirations? It's a very debatable thing, but limitations have a very strong hold. Let me share another management story. I long time back, about 25, 26 years back, I read this book called The Goal. I am not immediately getting the author's name. It's a fantastic story there, where somebody is working in an organization at a very fairly senior level, but is going through a lot of difficulties in life at one point of time. He's trying to revamp his factory, and there's a deadline given, and if he doesn't revamp with the support of his team, they have to shut down the factory or something like that. Very genuine. He's trying all kinds of management stuff, but nothing is clicking. Now, so he takes a day break. He's in enormous stress, so he takes a day break. His son is supposed to go for trekking, so he sends off his son. And then he receives a call saying that the scout master who was supposed to come that day is not fine. So they know that this gentleman has some experience with going up the hill. Would he guide the students? So he had a whole day free to kill, so he accepts. It was a beautiful story then. So he's like, let's say, imagine there are some 40 kids, maybe about 14 years of age or 15 years of age or something of that sort, and they have to trek about 5, 6 hours. He started trekking. At first it was random, and then he noticed that there are some boys who had planned very well. They had a light bag behind them. Some were well built, well exercised. So those who had a light baggage, who were well exercised, he started noticing that they were going in front. They were going ahead and ahead and ahead, and they were getting frustrated. Whereas people, who were more bulky or had a heavy bag, were lagging in the behind, and they were getting frustrated. So then he started experimenting. He made the more able boy the leader, and said, "Now you teach everybody to move forward and become the leader of the pack." So that worked partially, but it didn't solve the problem, because the leader of the pack always was fast and quick, and he kept moving forward, and the others were struggling. And suddenly, halfway through or an hour through, he had a brainwave. He noticed that there was one boy, bulky, carrying a heavy weight, and really struggling. He suddenly stopped everybody, assembled together, asked them what was going on, what we now call in management as check-in, and then he said, "You lead everybody." Now everybody was stunned and started grumbling, saying that this is the guy because of whom we are delayed. He becomes the leader. So, to cut a long story short, because the entire book is about that, the next experiment is how this boy goes forward, and then suddenly people realize that they anyway can't go ahead without this boy going forward. So they start distributing the weight around, doing all kinds of stuff, and suddenly he found that collectively they moved faster than before. The fact that he put the and he's that so he was talking about process. In process there is always that one great loop point, something that is not working well, which derails, and we have to really bring a lot of spotlight on that. At the same time, we are not really talking about being focused on what's going wrong and being obsessed with that. We're not talking about that, and I'll come to it in a moment. So to complete that story, there was an enormous breakthrough where they figured out many things. This boy became the leader, and they moved ahead very well, much faster than before. He put certain principles together, applied it in his own organization, looked at where are the critical problems, brought it forward, took the team support, co-created and all that stuff, and they moved forward. I'm sure I've not narrated the story as best as the book would have said, because it's about 25, 26 years back. But the key point here is, if because in the last 10 years or 15 years, I've also been seeing two kinds of people. One, people who work on limitations and work on limitations and work on limitations enormously and endlessly and remain stuck. Like there was a friend of mine, and I noticed him that once we did a process together for like a couple of hours, a process for an inner breakthrough. I completed the process, like it took really about many hours, 3, 4 hours, and it was late in the night. I finished it, I came back. Then I met him after some time and he said, Arul, you know what? I think something is still lingering, in that process. These are inner processes for transformation of our attitudes or, energies and all that stuff. He says, I think something is lingering. Can you rework? I reworked. And then again, I met him after like about a couple of months, and he said, "You know what? I think something is lingering. Can you rework?" Intuitively, I asked, "By the way, how long have you been working on this?" He said, "For the last 14, 15 years, I've been working on it." And normal language, it'll be nothing. It'll be something like, I'm getting more angry or some stuff like that. I said, "Look, maybe this is seeming like a nice addictive obsession. Constantly keep working on the minor limitations, and feeling not so great and happy about oneself." That's not what we are talking about. Okay. But at the same time, I've seen in my own life there is always a key limitation that is derailing. Like in my case, I can say that the second key limitation that I've carried over the past that I had to work on is I'm always enormously scared or afraid whether what will my comment do for others. Like if I say something, transparently, uh, will it affect them? And I've often seen it affecting people. So I used to swallow it or come late. It was one key limitation, a simple one, which I've seen in my own professional career, played through years and years and years and years, and then I had to work on that. Okay, now coming from the part of coaching, I'll first share a difficult situation. Okay, see when we coach, generally the coaching school says that you allow the other person to take the lead. Yes, and so some coaches, what they do is they don't apply their observation too much. They just go with what the other is saying. But often the other person has come to you because they are lost. They don't know. So one of the things that coaches really need to train in themselves is they need to really observe, 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 and know for oneself, what is the truth of the situation with reference to the other. To give you an example, when I did a leadership coaching once, so the person had come for an hour. I just observed, 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 and the person was talking about large problems of multi-billion dollars stuck in customs and stuff like that. He spoke for about 40, 45 minutes, and then I said, "Look, is it true that this is the difficulty that you're facing?" And it was an enormously small, tiny difficulty, which was playing in the family, which was playing in his hobby, which was playing in the work. And that's all that, we touched upon. And there was a huge breakthrough. But to be able to spend the time to go to that, limitation. However, let me share a challenging situation. Once I was called by referral to a very senior person. This person is a public figure, well known. So the person called me to guide and coach or whatsoever. I was much younger, maybe about 10, 15 years back. So first there was this excitement that you're going and meeting a very public figure and they have called you to guide them and all that. And so I went and I thought I'll do the job very, very religiously to the perfection of what I carry. So I went and the person started sharing. In about 10 minutes, I nailed it. I could see through what was the primary limitation that was coming. It's not that I'm looking for the limitation alone. Normally, I'm always looking for the fundamental aspiration. In this case, the limitation stood up. So as I was speaking, I just checked with the person, and I noticed that the person just completely shut off. It's like uh, I don't want to look at it. I'm not ready for it. Okay. So I was a little bit lost. I didn't know what to do because I didn't have the level of experience that I have right now. It was like about 15 years back. So I said, what do I do right now? Then I started looking for their aspiration. It wasn't coming through. And all the time it was a limitation that was carrying. So I've already tried once and I noticed clearly the person was shutting in. So then what one of the errors that I did an error. The same limitation that I saw in them, I rapport it in me. Okay. So suddenly a thought came, what if I help the person to just recognize that this is there? And I said, what if I just mirror it a little bit, without even talking about it? So I mirrored the limitation. The person was smart, the person saw through it. And in about 15 minutes, very politely said that, maybe we'll meet another day, and got me out of the room very quickly. Okay. So that's when I realized that these limitations are very tricky ones, In that particular case, the person was not ready to see, and I honored it. I should have just left it there, but I tried. I thought maybe can I just try once? Maybe I went too strong, and that itself was too much for the other person because maybe of life situations like us, life circumstances. So many a time I've also seen that when we are now I'll talk about coaching. When we are coaching people, uh, the first thing is we have to be very very neutral. Is one of the things that we really talk about in coaching, and which means that even the impression that I have about the other person, I need to throw it off. I need to throw it off. I need to throw it off. Look at it very fresh. And for this is where I have observed that I can't only rely on questions and what they're sharing. I also have to observe freshly them every time. How are they today? Has there been a progress? Has there been a new challenge? What does that mean? Have to truly and freshly observe. Okay. Now, uh, for me, I've seen that now the topic is around coaching, around limitations or handling limitations. So I'm going to focus on that. What I've actually observed is that when somebody is having a challenge, no matter how great a challenge, I'll always first detect the gift behind that. Okay. To give you an example, recently a young girl came, maybe about 20 years or something of that sort, and she herself labeled her with a couple of problems that she was going through AO, and was going to go take some drastic steps because of that. And I listened to her very carefully because she was suggested by her parents to talk to me. Listened very carefully, and I saw her gift. I saw that the gift behind all her problems was a exquisite sensitivity, extraordinary sensitivity at the senses level. And then I talked to her about some work she does, and I figured out that she was intuitive in one sense. She knew things a little bit ahead. And that was all coming because she was very sensitive. But since she was overly that, certain things used to jar in her. And thus she came with a whole bunch of problems. This is the problem. This is what I'm going to do. So it took me a while, but I first had to. So this is where I've seen when you even spot a limitation, breakthrough is not going to come from the limitation alone. Breakthrough is going to come from something that is going to fill in the limitation, something that's going to transform it, something that's going to shift the frequency. The entire life is about frequencies, shifting frequencies, and balance. So the method of zoom, zoom, zoom into the limitations is good to understand, but it won't heal and transform. So in this particular case, I accurately pointed out to this person, look, is this true? Is this true? Then I extrapolated. I said, is this how you operate in life? She said, yes, yes, yes. And I said, don't you see that the problem is coming because you have not understood your gift? Then I gave some example of another public figure in the past, who's well known, whose works are well known, and I pointed out, go and read that person. The person had the same problem, but thus the person was also a genius because they understood and they took it to the heights. Okay, so one of the things I always try and do is, this is my belief: if there's a -8, there's a +8. If there's a -9, there's a +9. If there's a +9, there's a -9. It's all. It's mostly most of the cases. So the greatest of limitations always have a goal behind it. The first is to spot it, but not to ignore the limitation. Okay. Like so, for example, for me at this point of time, there's something fundamentally great that is happening in my work, in my personal growth. Okay. But there's one limitation that is like a nagging chain. It's just pulling me. It's just pulling me. It's pulling me. It's very simple, but it's a strong limitation. Now, I'm working on both, and I'm moving along, the trajectory of what is unfolding. But I have my eyes on the limitation, and I'm going into it, and I'm going into it, and I'm going into it, to a point that why is this present inside me, and what do I do with that? Now, going back to coaching, no, I'll take it in a way of, let's say, interacting with team members. So I run an organization, and I have a bunch of people working together. In the past, I would say that I was not a great. I was a good development person. Okay, which means right from the beginning, I had the capacity of developing people. But there have been points of time where I cannot say I was a good people manager. I had made errors, in developing people, and most of the time the errors were coming because of very accurate observations, and then I didn't know what to do with it. Often I will see through, what exactly is the strength, what exactly is the limitation, but I didn't have the capacity to handle the journey for them very well. I was too quick. I also had this value of being transparent and upon, I'm very appropriate, but sharing things, in a transparent manner. It's later on that I understood that it's a journey. It's always a journey. It's never that, as a limitation you pointed out, it's over. It's never like that, neither in coaching or in people management. It's always a journey that we are creating for others as much as we are creating a journey for each of us. The greatest of limitations open the doorway to a journey. Back to the topic, I personally believe that we are fools if we think that it's just a vision and purpose that is leading our life. It is our limitations also that is equally leading our life. They create life circumstances. So if you just turn around and see what are the problems I'm attracting, okay, what's coming, what's visiting me, what's coming through people or what's coming through life circumstances, it'll give you a flavor of something that is in you, is in us. It could be at a skill level, like for example, I wasn't paying attention to detail in some of the basic admin matters, and then I had to literally pay attention. I had to correct that limitation, and then suddenly everything fell in place. Everything started going smoothly. uh, Talking about limitations, I want to bring another angle. Many of our organizations today are extraordinarily strong on analytics. We are very good in root cause analysis and analytics and all that. So if there's a problem, we analyze, we get a lot of data, and then we find out what is the difficulty, and then we try and solve it. Most often, it would not necessarily correct the limitation. It would just fix it, and then sometimes it will come back. The Indian method, there has been I wouldn't say necessarily Indian or Western. There's been this mindfulness method, I would say, which is equally true in the West and in the East, which sits with something, till things show up in its reality. And when you want to shift something, so for example, uh, something is happening incorrect in the team or in the workplace and all that stuff. Like I was talking with my wife recently, taking a classic example. Of course, I cannot take the example here. It's an organization which decided to pull out, from a particular market, and we both know the organization very well. So we're just chatting and said, why did they even take that decision? Because there was a lot of we said this was a performance, this was a sales. So we looked at all that together and we said, yeah, correct. So then, sometimes we go to management experts, our own experts who study all this, who do some projections and say the scope is very less. But never ever in my last 27 years, I've seen that things are like that. Things can transform completely when something on the inner shifts, or what you're doing is enormously contributory to the world or the society or whatsoever, or the product or service is really good. But in this particular case, the product or service was fantastic, world class, but they had a trouble and they actually pulled out of a market. Okay. Now, so I was just chatting with my wife and I said, really, I'm not sure. Okay. If truly a bunch of five people, a bunch of six people decided together saying that the product is awesome, and it is awesome, huh? It was awesome. If they clubbed in together and said, we're going to rework this out, and went back to the team, went back to the processes. And it's not just outer. Huh? Yeah, I have actually seen sometimes when there's a difficulty on the outside, I go back and really clean up the cupboard, really put the processes in place. In the office spaces, things that are not in place, put them in place, and suddenly on the outer, things would turn around well. So we got to understand that when we are working on limitations, it's not a very linear way. It's a cyclical way. It's a circle. Everything is a circle. Everything is interrelated. So the charm about working on limitations is, first of all, we need to understand that both our aspirations are leading our journey and our limitations are leading our journey. Fantastic. The charm is to keep our eyes open, really see through the limitations without getting frustrated. This is as simple as working on the stock market, and you are able to wait Very patiently when there's an up and down, when you intuitively or analytically know that how the market is going, you wait it out. Similarly, when we're looking at a situation, see both the plus and the minus, you know, then limitation certainly becomes a doorway. You will see a golden chain there. You will see something there which is enormously useful for you now that is, so you wait and you grasp that, and then you make that change. You develop a skill, or you develop an attitude, whatsoever is needed at that point of time. Then what we are doing is, into the container of a limitation, we are filling in something, and we are filling in something, and we are filling in something. When we are coaching others, we have to be very, very watchful that we don't push them on the wrong side. Neither are we closing our eyes. Uh, like in one client assignment, I actually saw a problem in the model halfway through. I pointed out, but still, in this particular case, we only partially responded to it. At the end of the whole program, in the feedback, exactly what we had sensed at the midpoint occurred. Okay, but so we can't just, when we are coaching and guiding or consulting, we can't just take what the other is saying, that we have to observe. But once we observe, we have to also wait and see how much they're ready to take, how much of a journey to create, and how much to, and in what way it would sink in with their rhythm or thought process or emotional journey, so that they get the clue, they get that insight, and it becomes a breakthrough that they own. Not that I have seen it or that I have brought it, but they recognize it themselves, and it is something that opens up for them. So yeah, this is about what I understand about limitations. So I personally think that it's a gold mine. Limitations is a gold mine, but we should avoid the trap of feeling bad about limitations. Or, it's not necessarily about feeling bad or good, but the capacity to dive in and really create a breakthrough. This is what I understand. So we'll close for today. I just want to share one practice which I've already shared several times. Just like, and I'm showing it differently. So, for example, you're interacting with somebody and you're guiding somebody, and you see a limitation in them. Watch it, see it. Don't close your eyes. Watch it, see it. Don't close your eyes, but don't move to judgment. Don't box them in some category or the other. They're very living, instruments. Watch them. But also, you can be very authentic. You can also hold ruthless compassion, which means that until you see a change there, you're willing to wait it out, and you're willing to be as demanding as needed, either from a work perspective or from a development perspective. Times when I have not fully developed people is, I saw the limitation and I said, okay, it's okay, we'll see. But times when I've truly contributed is when I held the space with ruthless compassion, but waited, being very clear. When there was a shift, I pointed out. When there was no shift, I pointed out, which is one of the ways I've seen that how we can work with limitations in and around us, in ourselves and others. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining, and catch you some other time soon. Bye bye.